Welcome back to Rams Up, your favorite LA Rams podcast. We are part of the Fans First Sports Network. You can follow us on our YouTube channel as well at LA Rams Up. I'm your host, Mark. I'll be joined occasionally by my football gurus, Paul and Ian. Let's get to it. Welcome back, Ram fans. Episode 503 of Rams Up. Got two things coming at you here. First, I'm going to share my 13 thoughts with you, 13 random thoughts about the state of the Rams. And I am going to provide the things that we should be looking for, hoping to see in this second preseason game against the Chargers. Before we get started, haven't done it in a few episodes, episode 503, let's talk about a player who wore number 3 for the Rams. Episode 403, I talked about OBJ. Had one glorious 3/4 of a season with the Rams. This time I'm going to talk about Frank Corral, the kicker for the Rams in the late 70s and early 80s, actually only 4 years with the Rams. Born in Delicias, Chihuahua, Mexico. Delicias, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Immigrated to the United States in Colorado and then eventually California. A 6-sport athlete at Norte Vista High School in Riverside. How is that even possible? Man, he must have got some cooperation from the various coaches. Played football, baseball, basketball, tennis, soccer, and track and field. So he gets a scholarship to UCLA. The Rams draft him in the 3rd round of the 1978 NFL Draft, and he kicked for them from 78 through 81 before giving way to Mike Lansford. Crow was also a punter for the Rams. So 4 years with the Rams, 13th on the Rams all-time scoring list with 379 points, sandwiched between SJ39 and Eric Dickerson. Is that a cool stat to share with your grandkids or what? Frank Corral, number 3 for our Los Angeles Rams. So let's get into my 13 thoughts, my 13 random thoughts about our Los Angeles Rams here in mid-August, right before we get into that preseason game with the Chargers. And I will have a preview of that game coming up after this. My first thought is I heard Warren McClendon getting some reps at left tackle and looking pretty good. This is his opportunity to make this roster, really, if he can prove that he can play guard in one of those tackle positions. So much value there. Him and Joseph Noteboom swing guard tackles potentially. And hey, if Logan Bruss and Bo Limmer also continue to improve, man, I feel really good about this offensive line. Aaron Donald at camp, good to see, and there's still thoughts about him coming back for a playoff run perhaps. That would be something to see. A lot of people totally discounting it, other people thinking it's going to happen. And I don't know where I fall on that, but not only would it just add a ton of talent to our defensive line, but it also would mix things up as far as what offensive coordinators have to deal with after watching a Ram defense for 17 weeks, and then all of a sudden Aaron Donald is thrown into the mix. But there's a downside as well. You have some cohesiveness. You have a group that's been working together all year long. Now, I'm not saying they're not going to welcome Aaron Donald, but there's obviously going to be some slight adjustments that these other defensive linemen are going to have to make, as well as the edge rushers and even the linebackers. Here's a thought number 3 for you. Rams are going to be moving their training facility to Woodland Hills. It's basically already there. They just have to make this transition. Got to finish up some things at the facility, apparently. And Ian and I have both talked about the temperatures there. Now, I spent a lot of time in Woodland Hills as a teenager and a young adult, and I don't remember it being especially hot. A little bit warmer than other parts of the valley, I suppose, tucked up against those hills there. I guess that's why. Actually closer to the ocean than a lot of other parts of the valley. And I did some quick research on temperatures. This past July, they had 4 days over 100, 2 days in the high 80s, and the rest were in the 90s. And in August, 6 days over 100, 1 day in the 80s, and the rest in the 90s. The high was 106 degrees on August 5th. Those are certainly not ideal training camp temperatures. By comparison, Thousand Oaks, about 10 degrees cooler. Now, old school football coaches might say, yeah, hey, let's train in these extreme conditions. Maybe extreme's too strong of a word. Certainly not going to have a high humidity to deal with. But I'd be interested to see how some coaches feel about that out there. Is it better to have moderately warm temperatures where you can work on technique, the playbook, and all that? Or is it good to train in these warmer temperatures where you're just theoretically getting into better shape, I suppose? I don't know, man. I'll take the low 80s. My fourth thought is this. Joint practices are clearly really valuable, but these coaches have to get these players on the same page, working together as well as working against each other. These fights, these disruptions, just every season, every training camp, they get out of hand, or at least some of them do. They got to figure this out. One day, this is going to go really sideways. It almost happened with Aaron Donald with the Bengals. This latest incident with the Ram intern getting blown out of proportion, I think, but still, they got to figure it out. Joint practices, extremely valuable. Joint practices, extremely risky. Saw an article about starters of the Rams who may be out, who are at risk of losing their starting jobs, and the two guys they called out, I forget where I saw this, I apologize for that, Darius Williams and Demarcus Robinson. Now, Darius, if he's good to go, he will start ahead of Kobe Durant, in my opinion. And I don't think Jordan Whittington, I guess that's who we're talking about, is going to unseat Demarcus Robinson anytime soon. I think they're just going to find ways, spots to get Jordan Whittington on the field. And hey, maybe later in the year it happens for Jordan Whittington. Rams could go 4 wide receiver sets more this year than in years past as well. So we'll definitely be looking for that. We're up to random thought number 6 here. You know, we've been talking a lot about Nick Hampton making a move to solidify his roster spot, at least based on his performance in the preseason game against the Cowboys. And I hear Chris Shula calling him his silent assassin. Now, if a DC is calling you a silent assassin, I have a feeling you have locked up your roster spot, and I may just have to add Nick to my list. Hey, maybe he won't play against the Chargers. That will be proof he is on this 53-man roster. Man, he looks so good. And like I say, if you're the DC silent assassin, you got to roll on this team. And here's a thought for you. I've been beating this drum for a while. How good have the Rams drafted in the later half of the draft? Take a look at the guys they have drafted in the 5th round or later over the last 3 drafts. Kyron Williams, Pro Bowler for sure. Quentin Lake, darn good player. Darion Kendrick, making his mark, got injured, he'll be back. Russ Yeast, 7th round pick, making an impact. AJ Curry, another 7th round pick, hanging around. Could be an important backup. The aforementioned Nick Hampton, man, his name's popping up a lot lately, isn't it? Warren McClendon, I think he's going to be a definite legit backup on this team. Davis Allen remains to be seen, 2nd string tight end, I think, maybe 3rd string, I'm not even sure, but he's very promising. Puka Nacua, need I say more? Ethan Evans, solid punter. And then Brennan Jackson, Tyler Davis, Joshua Carty, Jordan Whittington, Bo Limmer, and KC Leviston. Man, what a haul over these last 3 years in the 5th round and later. On to random thought number 8. Now, someone, again, I forget who it was. I got to do a better job of tracking where I'm reading this stuff. Typically try to share the author of these articles. But someone was writing about who the Rams' next quarterback would be, and they were a little dismayed that it might actually be Kirk Cousins. And it's kind of spot on in one fashion. When Matthew Stafford does move on, I think the Rams' next move will be to bring in a solid veteran quarterback. I don't think Sean McVay is going to necessarily have the opportunity to draft a high caliber college quarterback unless they find some sleeper that nobody else knows about or everybody else is underrating. I don't think Sean McVay is going to have the patience to develop a quarterback unless it's a guy like Caleb Williams, where you just plug him in and go. I think their move will be to sign a veteran quarterback, someone like Kirk Cousins, but there's some other guys out there. What you kind of have to hope for is a really talented veteran quarterback, stagnates a bit with his current team. Maybe the team falls short, the quarterback gets a little frustrated, and a team like the Rams makes a trade, brings the guy on board. Hey, how about someone like Josh Allen? How costly would that be, though? We'd be back to the F them picks strategy, I suppose. Or even someone like Trevor Lawrence. Could see that happening. Hey, just throwing out names. Kirk Cousins, Josh Allen, Trevor Lawrence in a couple of years, or maybe even 1 year. The Rams could make a move for someone like that now. Realistically, are the Bills going to trade Josh Allen? Are the Jags going to trade Trevor Lawrence? Probably not. Almost certainly not. But I think that's a strategy the Rams might take, targeting a talented veteran quarterback, bringing them in as opposed to drafting someone and developing them for a year or two. Hey, maybe they thought Stetson Bennett was the guy. Not sure about that at this point. Random thought number 9 is really an observation. Aubrey Pleasant, head coach for a day against the Chargers. Sean McVay and the Rams doing it again. The culture they have here, giving these young coaches, these guys that have really put in their time, an opportunity to take the lead, be the boss for a day. I think it's really cool that the Rams do that. And you know what? Sometimes it comes back and bites them, but I don't think Sean McVay cares that much. He'd rather see a guy move on and get an opportunity. And hey, maybe the Rams get a comp pick or two. For this Chargers game, and we'll talk more about it later on, but a growing list of players being held out. And Sean McVay actually said that if there is a guy that was held out against the Cowboys, he's going to be held out against the Chargers. What does that mean for guys like Casey Leviston? And I still don't know what's going on with Bo Limmer and Laurel Murchison. I've been digging for that information. Insiders aren't sharing. Nobody seems to know. I guess decisions along that offensive line, those 7th, 8th, and 9 offensive linemen, that's going to be decided by 1, who's healthy, and 2, who proves it in scrimmages and in camp as opposed to preseason games. I saw an article on USA Today, Rams Wire, suggesting that the Rams make a play for Hunter Renfrow. And the first thing I did was I looked at the date of this article. Was it from back in March or April maybe? No, it was from just the other day. I'm sorry, this Rams wide receiver room is fully stocked. They're not signing anybody. And one of my favorite Ram writers, Cameron DeSilva, listed his 8 players on the bubble. So I took a guess before I read his article. Who are the guys that you might say are on the bubble? And one would be Casey Leviston, wide receiver. I would say any one of the 3 wide receivers, really. Johnson, Xavier Smith, even Tutu. On the edge, O'Shawn Mathis is certainly on the bubble. I might call out Deshaun Johnson, not sure what to make of him. Maybe Corey Durden, I don't know. I rolled with Johnson, although I think he'll be on this roster. Cornerback Trey Tomlinson, safety Jason Taylor. Really a long shot at this point, I think, to make this team. And there's another safety, I'm not going to say his name, who I think is on the bubble. He is my surprise cut this year, but I'm not going to go there. I don't want to throw shade on a guy. Plus, there's a good chance I'm wrong, so I don't feel real confident about it, so I'll keep it to myself. And then quarterback Stetson Bennett on the bubble. But who can the Rams make a play for? Hey, come in and be our guy for 2 games. It'd have to be someone fairly young that hasn't established himself. So how much better would that player be than Stetson Bennett? Not so sure. So I went to Cam's list and, we were spot on a few guys. Casey Leviston, Trey Tomlinson, Stetson Bennett. And then he did name a wide receiver, and I guess Cam's being a little bolder than I am, Xavier Smith. And of those three, Smith, Johnson, and Tutu, he is probably the one most likely not to make this team. But I'm kind of pulling for him. Hey, I'm pulling for all of them, if that makes sense. But he listed Zach Evans. In my opinion, Zach Evans has already missed the boat. Logan Bruss, yeah, I guess I can see that. Him and Leviston both on the bubble. And Jake Hummel. And the reason why it might make sense for Cam to include Jake Hummel, whereas I did not, they got three inside linebackers, I suppose. We're counting Troy Reeder. Or are we? Jake Hummel, a known quantity. I've talked about it already. And he played really well in that preseason game. He got a couple of young guys, Omar Spates, Fatukasi. So I don't know, man. Yeah, Hummel probably is on the bubble. I think all those linebackers are. But Hummel is probably the most prominent one that is at risk of losing his job. If Fatukasi or Spates doesn't make it, we kind of shrug, move on. If Jake Hummel doesn't make it, that will be a little bit more newsworthy for sure. I saw another article by Enzo Flojo on clutch points, and Enzo called out the 4 players who improved their stock by their play in this Rams-Cowboys preseason game. And I would have excluded the rookies, the kind of obvious guys that I think have already made a name for themselves and are on this roster for sure, namely Jordan Whittington and Tyler Davis, but that was 2 of the guys they named. Fair enough. And Nick Hampton, kind of obvious as well. But they also named, curiously, Stetson Bennett. And before you fall out of your chair, make some good points. And as I said, I saw some things I liked, and he saw the same things this writer did when he stayed in his progressions and was in the pocket. He actually played fairly well for much of the game. He just made some really bad decisions through the course of the game. Now, would I say that he improved his stock? No, I would not. But I think the reaction to his 4 interceptions is maybe a little too strong. I know my roundtable partners will disagree with me on that, and fair enough. I'm just saying I did see some good things from Stetson Bennett. I would not say he improved his stock, though. Back in a second with all the things we want to see in this Rams-Chargers game.
Hey everyone, it is Ryan Seacrest here. Ready to heat up your summer vacation? Get ready, things are about to get sizzling at Chumba Casino. Your summer getting a whole lot hotter with a special daily login bonus waiting just for you. So sign up now for reels of fun and reels of prizes right here at Chumba Casino with yours truly. Join me at ChumbaCasino.com and dive into a summer of social casino fun.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
When you need to work quickly and confidently across different apps and platforms, consistent quality communication is key. Whether you're writing documents, emails, or presentations, you need Grammarly. It's an AI writing partner that helps you get your work done faster with better writing. It's always there to help because it works where you work, across 500,000 apps and websites, so you can get more done no matter where you're writing. Grammarly is the gold standard of responsible AI, trusted by millions of professionals for 15 years. It gives you personalized writing suggestions based on your audience, goals, and context, plus tone suggestions to help you navigate even the most difficult work conversations. 96% of users agree. Grammarly helps them craft more impactful writing. Sign up and download Grammarly for free at Grammarly.com/podcast. That's GRAMMARLY.com/podcast. Grammarly. Easier said, done.
Welcome back, Ram fans. Let's talk about this Rams-Chargers game, preseason game number 2. I'm not going to do my fearsome 4 keys to the game. Not ready for that yet. We'll save that for the regular season. We are going to just talk about the things we hope to see in this Rams-Chargers game. And man, it's a tough thing to discuss with this Rams team because who's going to play and how seriously do the coaches even take this? They put so much more weight on these joint practices and the stuff that we don't see. And sometimes we draw conclusions for what we're seeing in the preseason games, and we are fooled, and we're maybe going to get fooled again. But let's give it a shot. Let's talk about the things we want to see in this preseason game. We'll start with the offense. 4 things we want to see on the offensive side of the ball, 4 things we want to see from our defense, and then 2 closing thoughts. Let's do it that way. So on offense, what are the 4 things we want to see? Well, it's pretty straightforward as far as the quarterback position goes. We need Stetson Bennett to clean up his act and a cleaner game. I really did see some things that I liked, some promising aspects to his game, but man, can't be turning the ball over like that. So we just want to see Stetson improve in that aspect of the game. He's going to be our backup weeks 1 and 2. And that has a lot of us worried. Let's just leave it at that. So a step forward, 2 big steps forward by Stetson Bennett. That would be what I would hope to see. Pretty obvious, no-brainer there. And hey, if not, maybe Dresser Wynn gets a shot. I don't think he's the answer either, but how do we know? Get him out on the field, let him have a series or 2. The second thing I want to see from the offense, what about some continued improvement for some of these guys played really well. Zach Thomas, Bo Limmer, Logan Bruss, AJ Curry. Probably leaving guys out. Is Casey Leviston going to get out there on the field at all? Not sure about that. I'd love to see him. Warren McClendon getting some reps at left tackle perhaps. So again, don't want to overreact. If they do play well, we kind of need to see them dominate. Maybe a couple of these guys. That's what we really need to see. I get really excited when they play well, and Ian and Paul have to walk me back a little bit and say, hey, remember who they're playing against. They did not necessarily look good when they got plugged in against Cowboy starters in those joint practices, and the Chargers as well. So we need to see them dominate if they're out there. The third thing I want to see, hey, is Xavier Smith going to make a real push for a roster spot? I think Tyler Johnson, has he pretty much sealed the deal for himself? What's going on with Tutu? I don't want to throw too much shade on him. But it's really about Xavier Smith, because I have a feeling Jordan Whittington is not going to play. We all want to see him play. He's so much fun watching. But I have a feeling he will not play or won't play much. It's going to be some of these undrafted free agents and Tyler Johnson and Xavier Smith. So let's see Xavier Smith light it up, and maybe in the return game as well, because that is related to, that'll impact what happens with Tutu, if anything. And I'm sorry, I don't want to be super negative about Tutu Atwell, but hey, it's the elephant in the room. Does he belong on this team anymore? And that's a horrible way of putting it as well. Does he have a role in this offense anymore? And if he does, then let's see it, Sean. Let's see it. It's quite a dilemma for the Rams offense, what to do with Tutu Atwell. And the last thing I want to see from this offense, I think it's a done deal who our 4 running backs are, but I still want to see Zach Evans. And, maybe the problem is he is generally so unproductive that they just got to get him off the field and get someone else out there. But at this point, what are we learning by giving Boston Scott 15 carries? I want to see Zach Evans, and I want to see a lot of them. If not for no other reason, to give him a shot at maybe landing someplace else, right? Let him get some carries, see what he can do. I loved what he did on that one pass reception, and I saw him downfield a couple of other times. So maybe that's the way to get him involved. Get him the ball, get him out on some routes, see what he can do. But yeah, we need to see him run between the tackles too. Okay, what about the defense? What are the fearsome 4 things I want to see on the defensive side of the ball? I want to see that battle for the edge rushing positions continue. Nick Hampton, does he have it sewed up? Maybe. Zach Van Valkenburg, O'Shawn Mathis, need to see more of them. Keir Thomas, maybe they can light it up a little bit. Love to see O'Shawn Mathis make a splash play or 2. His chances of making this roster, from what I can see, are maybe fading a little bit. So be eyeballing those guys for sure. If Nick Hampton's in, the silent assassin, I guess we'd expect him to continue what we saw last week against the Cowboys. The second thing I want to see from the defense, the kind of a similar deal, inside linebackers. Is Troy Reeder really on this roster for sure? My theory was, I think I got this from Paul, is Troy Reeder did not play partially because Ernest Jones' health was in question. So they sit Ernest Jones and they also sit Troy Reeder, not wanting to risk him. Is that really the case? Kind of guessing here, but Jake Hummel, Neal, Fatukasi, Spades all have a shot at making this team, but it's very possible the Rams only carry three inside linebackers, possibly four. Do the number crunch like I did on the roster lock segment a couple days ago. You'll see the challenge there, trying to nail down how many inside linebackers they might carry. But some of these guys, potentially very good special teams players. Jake Hummel is a good special teams player. So that battle may be one on the special teams practice field, actually. So, but I'll be watching for some contributions from those guys. All four of them, I think, have a shot at making this roster. And the third thing I want to see from the defense, what's going on with Trey Tomlinson and some of these other cornerbacks, Charles Woods, Jerry Jacobs. There's going to be a numbers crunch going on there in the secondary. I only had 6 defensive backs locked in on this roster so far. So there's a lot of jockeying going on. And a lot of times at the cornerback position, it's about opportunities. You know, if we're not seeing guys on film during the game, doesn't mean they're not doing their job. It could mean they're actually playing really well. Need to go back and watch, the all 22 film, stuff like that. But Charles Woods was getting a lot of hype on the practice fields. Trey Tomlinson, second-year guy, a little undersized. Can he stick on this roster? And then there's Jerry Jacobs, the guy they brought in, the ex-Detroit Lions. They signed him when Darion Kendrick was hurt. I don't think he's sealed the deal yet. So be watching the secondary, see if there's any standouts there. And really, I just talked about cornerbacks and safeties, kind of the same thing. Jalen McCullough, Tanner Ingold, Jason Taylor II, all battling for a roster spot. And the Rams need versatility from their defensive backs, especially the safeties, guys that can come up and play that star position a little bit. And that's what could be going on here in special teams play. Jason McCullough, Tanner Ingold, Jason Taylor, maybe none of them make this roster. Maybe a couple of them do. Again, I'm not going to get back into the numbers crunching like I did on the roster lock segment, but basically want to watch this secondary, this cornerbacks and the safeties, and see if anybody shows up, as Chris Shula and Sean McVay like to say. If they show up, if you notice them, probably good things going on there. 2 other things in closing I would hope to see in this game. This Charger defense right now, from what I've seen and heard, kind of stinks. Justin Herbert's not going to play. It's going to be their backup quarterback and probably a lot of backups on offense across the board. And their starters, in my opinion, are not that formidable. Their second stringer is even more so, less formidable is what I mean. So I would expect this defense, I'm not expecting a shutout, but I'm expecting something pretty close to it. The Seahawks held them to 3 points. Let's keep them out of the end zone. That'd be a nice, even though it's a preseason, you want to build a culture, a vibe that this defense is a shutdown defense no matter who's out there. So let's hold this Charger offense. Let's shut them down more or less. Hey, they may end up getting 3 or 10 points, but nothing more than that is what I'd hope for. And lastly, Joshua Cardi. We liked what we saw, hit the field goals, hit the game-winning extra point. Sean, give him a shot from 40 yards out, 48-yard field goal, somewhere in that area. I've been asking for that from Ram kickers forever. Time for Joshua Cardi to hit one. And, maybe Sean's going to forego the longer field goals because why risk it? The only thing you're going to really learn is, hey, he can hit it in a preseason game. If he misses it, does his confidence take a shot? So maybe they pass on the 50-plus long 50-yard field goals. So maybe they take a pass on those really long field goals. But hey, can we have a 46-yarder, please? That's all I'm asking for. So that's what I'm hoping to see in preseason game number 2 at SoFi Stadium against the Chargers, taking a few steps forward for all of these units out here from Rams Up. That's going to do it for this episode. Remember, you can reach us at ramsuppodcast@gmail.com. And don't forget about our YouTube channel. Our handle is at laramsup.com. Till next time, keep the horns up, stay safe, and have fun out there.